It started off as a simple idea.
John Tobias and Ed Boon were the minds behind saying shock value can give us an edge.
That turned into an arcade sensation.
The reaction to the players was ridiculous. I mean, we'd see crowds of 50 people crowded around the game. People were driving from New York to play this new fighting game.
And became one of the most controversial games in history.
There was concern about these games and members of Congress talking about video games destroying our youth.
If you don't do something about it, we will.
This is the story of the highs.
How can you not rip the spine out of somebody that you're playing against and not think this is the greatest game ever?
And lows.
Mortal Kombat 3 was a bit of a letdown.
Of It's the late 1980s, and fate brings together two game developers at a Chicago-based game company called Midway. Their names are Ed Boon and John Tobias.
When I started at Midway, Ed Boon was working at the time as a pinball machine programmer.
They were starting a video department and hooked up with me, and I started programming a football game called High Impact Football.
And I was working with a fellow by the name of Mark Jamel on a game called Smash TV. I was new to video games, and Ed was as well.
John and Ed both had a passion for kung fu movies. John especially. They both realized that they had the same interests.
John Tobias and Ed Boon were sort of two of the chief innovators on the design and art side in Midway at the time. They were the minds behind saying shock value can give us an edge in terms of breaking into the market.
Soon, the two decide to work together on a new game.
So we had this conversation, and neither of us had really worked on a game with each other, and we said, yeah, we should do a fighting game sometime.
At the time, Midway had a hardware system that could support digitized graphics, which is fairly new back in the late 80s, early 90s. And we wanted to really take advantage of that. And we thought that a fighting game or something where characters could be represented very large on screen would be something that we could take advantage of and create a game around.
They meet with an early setback.
We wanted to make, Van Damme, the video game. At the time, I think he might have signed a deal with Sega or something. They said, sorry you guys, but you can't have it. And, Bloodsport, I think, had just come out, and we were all bummed out.
But the release of a popular fighting game helps get their project off the ground.
Street Fighter II had come out and proved successful in the arcades, and so that just kind of bolstered our desire to do a fighting game, and it also gave management the opportunity to give us the go-ahead to start work on the project.
So we went into the back, with the blue screen and videotaped some friends, throwing kicks and punches, and I mocked something up in my office, and suddenly when we got this uppercut going, management came in and they saw it and they were like, okay, green light.
When we started work on Mortal Kombat, because we were digitizing actors, we needed to find real martial artists to work with, and it just so happened that some friends of mine had been practicing martial arts for years and years, and they were very good at it. They were the go-to guys for us on the first game.
So at that point, it was like, a three-person team, and my job was going to be basically doing backgrounds. John Tobias would be doing the character work.
John would design the characters and what they look like, their costumes.
And Ed would be doing the programming.
And I was kind of like, how did the game play? How quickly were the controls responsive? And what were the secret moves?
And then later on, as the game was getting nearer to completion, Dan Forden came into the picture and started doing sounds for the game. So it was really a four-person team. Mortal Kombat was just four people, really. It just started.
Mortal Kombat is underway, but with established giants like Street Fighter II, will the team at Midway be able to make a game that can compete? It's 1991, and a team of developers led by Ed Boon and John Tobias is hard at work making sure Mortal Kombat isn't just another fighting game.
What separated us visually from Street Fighter, we had blood. It was almost like, an MTV version of Street Fighter. You know, very American.
Street Fighter was really like a like hand-drawn kind of cartoon, and Mortal Kombat's like digitized graphics, but kind of hand-painted on top of the digitized, so there's a polished, digitized look. It had a unique look to it.
One of the first things Midway does is create a story with a distinct cast of characters.
Mortal Kombat really started out as like this whole tournament thing. It's kind of like very similar to Enter the Dragon.
The whole storyline just seemed a little bit bigger than a normal video game, and just something you could relate more, get more into it than a normal fighter.
In Mortal Kombat, they really spent a lot of time developing kind of mythology about each of these characters and their backstory. The characters in the game are really well defined. Just the way they acted and sort of the way they looked. Each character really had its own kind of sensibility to it. Each character has a real repertoire of moves that makes sense for that character. I think you easily found a favorite character when you played that game.
The Jean-Claude Van Damme idea didn't pan out. So we already had this character that was kind of dressed up like he was in Bloodsport, and that's kind of like the whole Johnny Cage thing. There was a character in Big Trouble in Little China, this guy with a big hat and electricity and stuff, and we were like, we gotta make a character like that, and that's where Raiden was born. Liu Kang is kind of a hybrid of Bruce Lee and a couple other martial arts stars that we've seen. And then Kano was this guy with this metal eye patch, and I think Terminator 2 or something had come out recently, and we said, okay, let's make a guy whose skin is peeling away. We ran out of memory. We had to have 2 characters with only one amount of memory in the game, so we said, let's make a yellow ninja, tint him blue, and we make another character out of it. We came up with Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Then our CEO said, no, you gotta add one more character, put a female character in the game.
Sonya wins.
I said, oh, let's call her Sonya. And we threw her in the game, and all of a sudden, we had our cast of 7.
But what truly sets Mortal Kombat apart from other fighters is also what will make it infamous.
Street Fighter had this feature where a guy would be dizzy, and you would get a free hit when your opponent is dizzy. And I hated being the guy who was dizzy, but I loved being the guy who would make somebody dizzy. So we moved that part of the game to the end of the round, and we said, okay, now just give him a big uppercut at the end. And somebody said, wouldn't it be great if you could, just tear their heart out?
So fatalities were introduced in the first Mortal Kombat. Sub-Zero could rip the spine out of a character. Sonya could have a kiss of death.
People always remember the fatalities in Mortal Kombat. It was the over-the-top finishing move. It's like the grand finale.
Wins.
We do the whole dun-dun-dun, fade to black. If you know your right 20-button combination at the right time, then you can do this amazing effect. And then the whole thing is like, wow, how'd you do that? And that built the mystery, and the mystery got the fans' attention and kind of snowballed from there.
It's a lot more fun to beat your opponent by throwing them to the spikes, as opposed to just saying, game over, I win.
In 1992, Mortal Kombat rolls out to arcades, and the reaction is explosive.
The reaction to the players was ridiculous. I mean, we see crowds of, 50 people crowded around the game. People were driving from New York to play this new fighting game.
People play it from 4 in the afternoon till midnight. People would be running around the game, screaming, cracking up and stuff. So people got a big kick out of it.
How can you not rip the spine out of somebody that you're playing against and not think this is the greatest game ever?
In fall of 1993, Acclaim works with Midway to bring Mortal Kombat home to the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. A record $10 million are spent to market the game.
It's going to be a Mortal Monday at midnight. The stores are going to be allowed to open up, and there were lines formed in front of stores.
Mortal Monday was created by Acclaim, who originally did the publicity for the first Mortal Kombat title.
And then they showed us a TV commercial for it.
It's the big, kids in the streets screaming, Mortal Kombat!
I was like, wow, this is really big. And it just kind of got out of control. And at that point, we were like, this thing is in doesn't belong to us anymore. It's just kind of like its own thing. And they sold 6 million copies.
Not only is Mortal Kombat a hit, but gamers are hooked trying to uncover all the secrets in the game, like Reptile, a hidden character. But the success of Mortal Kombat at home brings some unwanted attention that will change the world of gaming forever.
Why do you need to go across that line and produce this stuff?
By 1993, Mortal Kombat is a nationwide phenomenon. In just 3 weeks, the home versions of Mortal Kombat sell 3 million copies, making it the best-selling game of its time. But the very thing that makes the game unique also gets it in trouble.
The fact that there was blood in the game was sort of this big controversy, and I remember when Mortal Kombat first came to the home console systems, Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, and Nintendo wouldn't even let them have blood in the original Mortal Kombat game.
We were told by Acclaim that, Nintendo was not going to allow it. It's their system. They had an image that they were really upholding, and they did not want a game that had blood in it, let alone fatalities. Acclaim said, oh, let's make the blood gray and it'll be sweat.
But fans aren't happy with the decision, and Nintendo pays a high price for it.
I've actually heard some people say that that was one of the things that helped Sega overtake Nintendo in that whole console wars, because the Genesis version was outselling it like 3-1. The Super Nintendo version actually looked better. The Genesis version was more realistic and actually played better too.
But the controversy doesn't end there. Mortal Kombat becomes just one of many violent games that are targeted by concerned parents and politicians.
There was concern about these games, and members of Congress talking about video games being the sort of decline and fall of Western civilization and destroying our youth and leading them down the path of no good.
I hope you walk away with one thought today, that if you don't do something about it, we will.
And the industry felt that we needed to respond in some way, in a proactive way.
They wanted to get some sort of a rating system, and there should have been a rating system in place. I think the rating system is necessary. It's just like an R-rated movie. But that was like kind of the cause of that whole thing, was the fact that it didn't have a rating system in place.
The controversy over violent games such as Mortal Kombat play a big part in the formation of the IDSA.
The IDSA formed back in late 93, early 1994, and we felt that it was much more productive for the industry to self-regulate.
I think the controversy actually, it didn't hurt the sales by any means. I think it actually brought more attention to it.
The Mortal Kombat dynasty continues with the release of Mortal Kombat 2 in April 1993.
Mortal Kombat 2 totally improved over the original title. Technology improved. We got to make the characters look a lot more realistic than the first game. The storyline actually got to be more involved. Outworld was created during MK2. More popular characters were introduced in MK2. Jax was introduced. More fatalities were introduced. It just looked bigger, more colorful than the original. Fans just, till this day, MK2 is still #1 in a lot of players' eyes.
And when MK2 heads to the home market, Nintendo keeps the blood in the game. The Mortal Kombat craze peaks in 1995 with the release of Mortal Kombat the Animated Series and the first Mortal Kombat movie.
I clearly remember seeing on CNN, they said, Mortal Kombat, $23 million, the second biggest August opening ever, and going, oh my God, this is insane.
That same year, Midway releases Mortal Kombat 3.
Mortal Kombat 3 probably had the toughest time of all the Mortal Kombats because it followed 2 climbing games in terms of features. We really wanted to add something to speed up the fighting, so we added the run button. And the run button let you kind of dash in there and get a bunch of hits in there. And we had changed a lot of the dynamics of the play mechanic.
When MK3 heads to home consoles, Sony gets exclusive rights to the game for the PlayStation. Some fans aren't happy with the sequel's new features.
One of the things that disappointed people about Mortal Kombat 3 was that they introduced a new combo system. The problem was the combo system was really, really complicated to learn. One of the great things about the original 2 Mortal Kombats was that it was a deep game, but it was pretty fun to play, just, without having to remember all these combos. Mortal Kombat 3 was a bit of a letdown.
In 1996, Midway releases an updated version of Mortal Kombat 3 called Ultimate Mortal Kombat. Midway plans to take the franchise in a new direction with Mortal Kombat 4. But will it be too much of a departure from what made the series a success? In 1997, a second Mortal Kombat movie hits the big screen. It makes $17 million in its first week, but doesn't match the success of the first film. By now, 3D fighters such as Tekken 2 are edging out 2D fighters. So Midway decides to take its franchise in a new direction with the release of Mortal Kombat 4.
Mortal Kombat 4 was the first one that was a departure from the digitized graphics. It was like, 3D models. It was a 3D presentation, but 2D mechanics. And I don't think that those two mixed as well together with that game.
More than 2 million copies of Mortal Kombat 4 are sold, but the game receives mixed reviews, and fans of the series are beginning to lose interest.
Mortal Kombat 4, showed some growing pains, I think, as they tried to learn about, how to do this game in 3D and how to make it fun. And, for the hardcore Mortal Kombat fans, I think they were nostalgic for the way Mortal Kombat 2 was, and they didn't necessarily want it to go to 3D.
But rather than returning Mortal Kombat back to its roots, Midway continues to expand the series.
Mortal Kombat mythologies.
And Special Forces were side projects of John Tobias.
John wanted to work on an adventure game, and he kind of led that whole project.
Those games were not the head-to-head fighting games. John was a storyteller, and he wanted to explore the whole realm of Mortal Kombat more.
Midway releases Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero in 1997. The game receives a lukewarm response.
How unfortunate. You are responsible for this, sorcerer!
With Special Forces, we wanted to introduce more of a adventure type of game.
It's panned by critics as one of the worst games in the franchise. 2 years later, John Tobias decides to leave Midway and start his own company, Studio Gigante.
I was looking for an opportunity to kind of branch off and sort of retain a bit of ownership in the things that I create. And as an employee of a larger company, you can't really do that. And so I enjoyed my time at Midway. I thought that it was a fantastic place to work, and we did great things there. But for me and my career, it was time to move on.
By 2001, the Mortal Kombat series is in a rut. Midway decides to abandon the arcade business and focus on the console market. Ed Boon and his team regroup for Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance.
What was different between MK Deadly Alliance and MK4 was that we just learned a lot more. We learned a lot about gameplay. We learned about how to be more proficient in 3D. We got more proficient with motion capture.
We all really wanted to do a good job and try to revitalize it.
Deadly Alliance comes out exclusively for home consoles in 2002, and for many fans, it revitalizes the series.
Mortal Kombat, of course, made a surprising comeback. I don't think anybody quite expected Deadly Alliance to be as big a hit as it was. It was a multi-platinum seller.
And in October 2004, Midway releases Mortal Kombat Deception.
It's a 3D game, but it still has that classic Mortal Kombat kind of feel to it.
I think people are going to look at this thing and go, wow, Mortal Kombat's more than just a fighting game. We've really enhanced the fighting engine with our backgrounds, giving them as much of an influence on the outcome of the fight as possible.
This is the Dark Prison background. We're now looking at the Death Trap. You're not going to survive that.
You can actually knock somebody back into this background here. You see them knocked down to the bottom. There's a weapon that you can grab. So it's a lot more of an immersive experience. It has the fighting game, it has a puzzle game, it has a board game, and then we have like a single-player conquest adventure mode. So all of these kind of mixed together, put it online. We're really excited about just how much stuff is crammed into this game.
After Deception, there will definitely be another Mortal Kombat. We'll push it as far as we can go.
No matter what the future brings to the Mortal Kombat series, there is no denying its effect on the world of gaming.
It is fun to see Mortal Kombat still sort of there as one of the top products.
It's the third or fourth biggest franchise in the world. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar with all the movies and the TV shows.
To Ed's credit, he's still there. He's still very faithful to the franchise that he built.
Mortal Kombat has always tried to be just the most outrageous, fun experience for the player.
That's why the fans keep coming in droves to play his games.
Outstanding.
I hate Adam Sessler.
I'd rather suck on a urinal puck than play this game.
Why does he get to play video games and review video games on a show about video games? Why does he get to spend every day with Morgan Webb?
We've got a preview of the hottest new releases.
Yeah!
Obsessed with video games? Watch X Play with Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb. Next.